Hi, I'm Anne Bowditch, and today I have with me Michelle Jeffries. And Michelle has a very tragic story to tell, really. But to give you a little bit of background, Michelle's worked as a health and wellness professional for over 15 years, many of those years working for the US Navy. Michelle created Healing Through Wellness as a site dedicated to her blog and book in honour of her daughter, who tragically lost her life due to a high school shooting. This was in 2014. She now dedicates her time to writing books on grief, blogging about her grief journey, and providing a safe place for those who unfortunately find themselves in a similar situation. Thank you so much, Michelle, for joining me. There is a really tragic story behind this, and I've read your book, and there's so many things that struck me in the book, actually. But when your daughter was called Zoe, and you had a phone call, I believe. So the point you got the phone call, can you just maybe talk us through the next sort of few events and maybe what went through your mind?
Yes, definitely. So getting that phone call obviously is a parent's worst nightmare. I was actually at work when I got the phone call, and it wasn't a phone call directly to me. It was a coworker actually coming in and saying, there's a news story going on right now, and there's been a shooting at a local high school, and I think your kids go to that high school. And that's actually how it started. And so immediately drop what I'm doing at work and start, panicking, because I'm like, every other parent, what's going on? What's going on? We turn the news on at work and we're just looking and we're seeing the shooting going on. We see paramedics and fire trucks going to the school. And I didn't have my phone on me. I worked in a gym, so I didn't have my phone on me. So I'm rushing, like, where's my phone? Where's my phone? And someone went and grabbed my phone for me. And by the time I get to my phone and I look at it, I have a zillion text messages. And I start, looking through them, and I'm, of course, panicking. And at this point, they're only from my son. And so, okay, I realize he's okay. I don't see any text messages from my daughter. And so I start texting her, calling her, nothing. Okay, maybe she, doesn't have her phone. We'll figure this out. Nothing, nothing. And then at this point, other people are calling me, are your kids okay? It's just basically just a complete crazy, I don't even know how to explain it. It was just panic, just panic. And this went on for a couple hours, and, we're trying to get information. Other parents are calling. No one has any information. We find out they're ushering, 2,500 kids to any location that they can get them to get them out of the way. So there's no information. I'm obviously leaving work. We're trying to figure out where to meet up, as the entire family is trying to, get to one spot. And we still, hadn't heard from her. And now the rumor mill is starting. Kids are talking, and we know my son is okay. And we just, we're hearing rumors that, she is probably one of the children that were, caught in the gunfire, possibly injured. We hear that they're transporting the injured kids to the hospital. So our first thought is, we go to the hospital. And we go to the hospital and we sit in this large waiting room, and there is just, tons of parents, because no one knows. The ones that hadn't heard from their kids were all sitting there. And tons of friends, lots of support. We just all, sitting, waiting, hours. Gosh, hours. I mean, we must have been at the hospital for hours. And, I guess, to answer your question, I never actually got a phone call. I got pulled finally into a room at the hospital and told by two detectives that my daughter was shot on scene. And
yeah. And
yeah.
I'm reading your book, which is called My Rainbow to Keep, which is lovely. And we maybe talk about rainbows because that's very relevant. One of the things that, I mean, so many things struck me from your book, and, because I am an empath, so I do as best you can ever put yourself in someone's situation, and you think, this is so hard to do. For me, one of the things that really struck me was you didn't get to see your daughter again.
No. Yeah.
Her injuries.
No. And it's this year will be 7 years for me, and I really struggled with that in the beginning, not having that closure. But in time, I realized that honestly, would that be the last memory that I would want to have, or would the memories that I have of her be what I would want to have? And I think it was probably the best scenario that it could have been. I think I have what, post-traumatic stress that I have already. And I think it would have been increased if I had seen her. So, it just, it's hard no matter how you look at it. And I think I struggled with that for a really long time. And, through therapy, I've come to the realization that it was the best scenario. And, there's a part of me that struggles because when you don't see them, you think it didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So there's this like disconnect, like, well, if I didn't see it, it didn't happen. So that was a hard struggle. But I think honestly, it was the best scenario for everyone.
Yeah, I would imagine from your own well-being, but then it does make the closure maybe takes longer. And actually, I know, I feel like I'm skipping a bit, but I know that you do mention closure, and actually you don't know that you ever get that, and that's completely understandable. Because the loss that you've experienced is so great. So how, we all experience loss in our lives, and maybe we don't ever really get closure from those closest to us anyway. I'm not convinced that we do.
Right. I agree.
I think it's about gradually some of the pain easing in whatever way you can achieve that. And part of that is time. And, we will discuss some of the other aspects. One of the other things I was interested, or, that struck me again from your amazing book, was the funeral for Zoe was full of thank yous. And so was your book, actually. Your book, your acknowledgements, I think it was at the back, was just flooded with the support that you'd received from people. And I think sometimes it's really difficult for those who are either close to you or on your periphery friend groups to know, maybe, how do I approach this? Because you sort of want to show support, but you don't want to look like you're prying, or that you're sort of just trying to get information, or that you don't want to feel that you're adding a burden to you by you having to reply to people. So but it did certainly sound like you had hugely supportive people around you.
Yes, definitely. And it took me a while to get there. And I really want to touch on this because in the first couple years of grieving, you take everything, you get a little defensive and you get your feelings hurt very easily. Everybody can't say anything right. They can't do anything right. Everything that someone says to you is either wrong, and I just want to say to, the first year or two, when you're in that first year or two, which I hope no one ever is, but if you are, anyone that's around you that's doing anything and saying anything, their intention is good. And no one knows what to say. But the fact that they're saying anything is good. Their intention is good. And just because they're not saying the right words doesn't mean that their heart is not in the right spot. And I think people get really stuck on the right words. And I know I was there like, oh, they didn't, that I don't want to hear that, or, that's not what I want to hear right now. And of course not. I don't want to hear everything happens for a reason, or, she's in a better place. Of course I didn't want to hear that. But they were there and they were saying something to me. And that meant, I wanted to put that in my book, a thank you to everyone that was there, because I think, in those early years, I wasn't as thankful as I could have been. And now I realize it, that, well, you know what, you were there. And a lot of people stepped away because they didn't know what to say. And they were, it was too hard to say anything. And then our relationships never came back together, or they just have completely stepped away because it was so uncomfortable that they couldn't. But the ones that were there are still there, or, yeah, it was uncomfortable. They said weird, uncomfortable things, or we had a weird, uncomfortable thing, but it, whatever, it worked out. And, maybe I did weird,
Yeah.
it just is what it is. It just, so anyway, I really wanted to make sure that the thank you and the gratitude was there, because I needed everything that happened. I needed all that help. I needed all that support. And
Yeah, I mean, I think in life there are certain, there are some things that we assume as certainties in life, and there are many things we might just almost run through in our head, like in fleeting, if this happens, I'll do this.
yeah,
But this is not something that people run through in their mind, and
no,
therefore everybody is unprepared. Um, just one of the other things as well that touched me was, I thought, oh gosh, that is so true. When something so tragic happens, the media flock. They want to know everything. They want to get everything. But then when they have other stories build up, they disappear probably almost as quick as they come forward. And the point you made was that nothing's changed for you. You're
no,
still in that situation.
yeah, yes, yeah, and that's a tough one too, because of course they want, they need their, 5 o'clock story and but there's good news reporters out there too. I've got, I've made a really good friend, and he's been there all 7 years. When my book came out, right, he's right there. And, what do you need? How can I help you promote your book? And I didn't even have to ask, hey, I see you've got a book coming out. How can I help? So, there's good and bad to media, but yeah, I mean, that was a tough one for me, especially because I had never experienced any of that. And so you don't know who to trust. I really struggled with that in the beginning. I'm thankful that, Alex was placed in my path. And I think, he was placed in my path for a reason. And I feel very thankful that I went with him and let him do my story of finally, and didn't jump on the first, like letting everybody in that first 24 hours, because it got crazy. It was very crazy. I mean, they were just trying to come to the house and set up in the yard, and it it was pretty chaotic, and you don't know what's going on in that first 24 hours.
Gosh, no, no. So that must be the last thing that you would need at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you're just trying to process everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Another term that you use is grief seekers. Could you maybe just explain how you sort of refer to that term?
Yeah, that caught me off guard. That is, for anyone who's had anything that's been public, tragedies in general, you get a bunch of people who will come out and want to help, but the help is for personal gain. And we had people setting up fundraisers on our behalf and actually involving us in the process. And then you'd never see them again. So, using photos of our children, letting people know they're having a fundraiser, all for personal gain. We had, you just have to, there was a lot of GoFundMe accounts that were not real. They weren't for us. There was, and that is hard because people want to help people in those situations. And so they're looking like, oh, where's your, where do we donate? Where do we help? We want to help you. We want to help you. And then you see these fake accounts or these things. And, unfortunately, some of them weren't real. And, we had a lot of, some of them were legitimate, so I don't want to say that they were all, under the grief seeker realm, but there was a lot of, social media accounts that were being made and classified as support groups. And then, come to find out they were, I don't know, some of them weren't even for profit. They just wanted the notoriety of being a part of the tragedy, which to me was very disheartening, because it was like, why would you want to attach yourself to this? I don't even want to be a part of this. And, seeking attention from, I don't want to say all of us, because I don't want to group the other parents in this, but I'll say myself. And if I wasn't, giving enough feedback, then getting upset with me. And it was like, I don't need this drama right now. I've got, all this other things going on. So then creating drama, you're not answering me back, messaging, and then the messaging would get more angry. And so finally I would have to block them. Just things like that were unnecessary and, just causing, hate and discontent where there didn't need to be any. And it was just things like that. And when I would finally went back to therapy and talked about these things that had happened, my therapist had explained to me that that's called a grief seeker. And I had no idea at the time that that's what I had been handling, in those first 2 years. Like, oh my gosh, yeah, I had, people taking my daughter's photo and making fake social media accounts and pretending to be her on dating sites and things like that. And it was like, you're using a photo of a girl who's dead and you're pretending to be her on a dating site. I had to go in and have these things shut down. And it was just all this extra work that I had to do while I was grieving her. And it was just, really, really difficult to do all this extra work. And, but people do those things when you have a tragedy. They take advantage of your tragedy. So, word of advice is, if you have a public tragedy, make sure your pictures have copyright on them. I mean, those are things you shouldn't have to think about, but unfortunately now, I know you do.
Yeah. In this day and age now, with
Yeah.
spammers and scammers
Hmm.
who are trying to steal identities, and that is, it's
Yes.
amazing how low
Yeah.
some people will stoop. So yeah, that's
You
as
know, part of me thought, you could, I guess you could let it go, but there was so much of it that I don't know, I felt like I was fighting for her constantly and I just couldn't let it go. So if I can see it, how many more were there that I couldn't see? I guess I just felt like I had to fight to get them taken care of. I don't know.
yeah, absolutely. I can totally understand that. Um, you talk in your book, actually, grief now has become your business in a way.
Yes.
Um, and you talk in your book about the stages of grief and what you have been through. We would not wish that on anybody, but people go through grief regularly, on a regular basis, whether it's a parent, a friend. We will, I can't imagine anyone really is going to live their life, certainly into adulthood, and not experience grief. So it is so relevant to all of us. Could you maybe just touch on those stages of grief and
Yeah,
anything from that you can add to that?
definitely. They one thing, stages of grief. Right away when everything happened, it was grab this book. We have this book, Stages of Grief. This is what you're going to experience. And of course, obviously I had stages of grief, stages of grief. I've lost grandparents, grief, maybe job loss, things like that, relationships, those types of griefs. But death of a child loss, whole different ballgame. So the first book someone hands me is Stages of Grief. And of course I read through it because I want to know what's coming, what am I going to experience. And great book, loved it. It was a good book. I found a lot of information in it, but those stages, you can go through those stages in one day. I could go through those stages in 1 hour. There's definitely, there's not an order for stages. I do not believe that you go through them in stages. I think they go, I can hit all 6 stages, 7 stages. I don't know. I think there's more stages than, are even listed. I could hit them all in an hour, just depending on my day. And I think that there's, levels on each one as well. And I think, you just, depending on your situation and what event or traumatic event that you've been through, you may add your own at some point. So I think they change. And I think, I don't want people to be mistaken when they think that this is how it's going to be, because it changes. And, I have a friend who I've become a good friend with who is in her first year and recently lost a son. And I've been talking to her about it and how it's just so cyclic. It just changes throughout the day. You could be good one minute and down in the next. And you just never know where you're going to be at. And so you can read every book out there, which is great. Definitely read the books because the experiences are what you need to be watching and reading. That's where you're going to get your information and your support. But the stages are they're there and they come and go. And I think we all add different ones to them. Like the one that I wasn't expecting was the mortality stage. I had no idea that one was going to hit me as hard as it did. And I think that one's important to talk about because I think that's the one we keep to ourselves. That's the one that we don't talk about. That's the one that, especially with child loss, when your child leaves, you want to go with them. And, if I didn't have my other kids, I think I would have went. And that's the one that we keep inside and we don't talk about. And that should definitely be added as a stage. And it's, this is going to be year 7 for me, and it's still, it's still a thought, that you think about. And, it's not as clear as that first year when, you'll be driving down the road and your thoughts take you to, oh, I could just drive off into that barrier right now, or I could, crash into that car in front of me. And, you're almost so numb that you're not even thinking twice about it. Or, you're wishing you had a terminal illness just so you could go. That mortality stage is very strong, and it's something that we don't talk about a lot. And it's the one that I think that parents of child loss keep inside. And I think it's one that needs to be talked about. I'm definitely going to be talking about it a lot in my new book that I'm working on. So, but it's definitely a stage.
Yeah.
If we want to categorize, I think it's definitely a stage that needs to be added in there.
Yeah. And how did you manage to, if you like, bat those thoughts away?
Yeah, for me, it was a no-brainer. I mean, obviously, yeah, I wanted to, when the depression was there, and I wanted, obviously I wanted to be with her, but I had my son and I would never leave him. Never, oh gosh, never. But, depression's tough, I have a huge support system, thankfully, and great doctors, and, my husband's great, and I, great support system. So, and I have put in the work, but it's been a long road, and it's, I'm still ongoing.
Absolutely.
Ongoing work every day.
Yeah, I'm sure. Some of the the process for you of working through the grief involved some interesting things. I thought a tattoo was one of them. Now, this was linked to Zoe, wasn't it? It was a drawing.
Yeah. So she, going through her things, she had a little box of drawings, because she, was a little artist, and she had a box of drawings that she had set aside, and they were all tattoos that she wanted when she was old enough to get tattoos. And she had this one of the Peter Pan, and it's, them taking flight in the night sky, and it's her, 10-year-old little drawing. So it's not, great, but it's just this little kind of like, they almost look like little blobs, but it's, the little guys going up into the sky. And she had made a little note, I want to get this as a tattoo or whatever. So I was looking for something to get as a tattoo in memory of her. And my son had gotten a lotus flower, this very similar, actually, it's almost the same. He got a lotus flower like this with her name. And I didn't want to get the same as him, but I wanted to get her name the same as he did. But I thought, okay, I'll take her little tattoo that she wanted to get, and it has her handwriting, and then I'll get her name. So that's what I got. And I have a picture of it in my book. And so I was like, well, she couldn't get it, but I'll get it for her.
I think that's lovely.
So,
That's so
yeah.
lovely. And one of the other things that I was intrigued by in a way was the crochets. It was just sort of almost, you don't expect to see something like that appear in a book on something so tragic, but that was something else that helped you, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, lots of crochet. I do. It's funny because I needed something to do with my hands. I think I probably have ADHD, I don't know. I don't like to label anything, but I have a lot of energy, which is probably why I worked in health and fitness all those years. I needed to do something with my mind. And I have a lot of energy. So when my mental state, is compromised and I'm dealing with my, mental state and I'm, trying to figure things out, but my body's not doing anything, and I'm just feeling the stress and things come up. And I it was like I needed something to do with my hands. And I taught myself how to crochet from YouTube of all places. I self-taught myself how to crochet. And it's funny, I crochet blankets, I crochet hats. I've donated over 100 hats now to hospitals. And anytime stressful times come up, death dates, things like that, I just get my crochet out and I start going crazy. And yeah, it's been a huge stress reliever. Huge. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, well, creativity is such a great way to be more mindful, but it is a great sort of, as you say, stress reliever. It's good, it's sort of good for the soul, if you like. It is a healing mechanism in a way. Something that I've sometimes done is beaded jewelry, and I find when I'm doing that and I've got all my beads and I'm deciding what I'm doing and putting them all on, I just get lost in it, and time just goes so quickly. And it's brilliant because the mind just shuts off from everything else and you're just in this zone. And I really encourage my clients to do something creative, whatever they want. And I think there's so many options when it comes to creativity, so many things you can do.
Yeah. When COVID hit, I started baking and I got into sourdough baking. Oh my gosh, I'm just baking sourdough bread like crazy now. Yeah. So that's my other new creativity thing that I've been getting into. So between crocheting and baking, I've always got something going on. Canning, I can jam. That's my other thing. So I just am always trying to stay busy. Yeah. And writing. Yeah. If I'm not writing, canning, baking, or crocheting, or walking, I do a lot of walking.
Yeah. And it's all good stuff. And I think sometimes when we talk about wellness, and people often think it's got to be complicated, and it really doesn't have to be complicated. It's about putting time into you, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And we're in such a fast moving sort of life now,
Right.
with having the internet. Sometimes I think it's a blessing and a curse, because anyone can get hold of us, at any time. We wake up to emails and messages and so on and so forth. And obviously I think we have to set boundaries to media. I set myself boundaries, and I do things like I turn my phone off at 8 o'clock at night, because I just think that's all off. That's me shut down for the night, and my brain can properly shut down.
Right.
But some people are terrified at the thought of going to bed without their phone next to them, and I think that's really unhealthy. And I think we do have to set those boundaries. But you sort of talk about different ways that you got through your grief. What were the sort of key sort of either treatments that you had or key things that you did, other than the crochet and the writing, etc., that got you through? What else got you through?
Well, I know it's unconventional, but I actually found a lot of healing through my medium. And people don't want to talk about spirituality and mediums, and they, kind of think, oh gosh, that is just insanity, that those people aren't, real or whatever. But man, after that first session, and, it's funny because that first session I ever had was, I really felt like that is when my healing began. And I mean, you're never healed, but it was when I was able to move into moving forward, where I could see that I was going to be okay. And that's what I needed. I know that I'm going to grieve her forever, until I die. But I couldn't see that I could move forward. And so after having that session with my medium, and I could see glimpses of her and get some closure, which is what I didn't have. I didn't get that goodbye, and I didn't get anything. It was like, oh my gosh, you're going to be okay. You're going to be able to do this. 7 years later, my medium's almost like we're buddies, and I still get to get glimpses of her all the time. And it has been the most healing thing ever. And, I don't, honestly, people can believe it or not, but for me, I know what I know, and I know what messages I'm given, and they're messages that she couldn't know unless she was getting them from Zoe. So, it's what's helping me move forward. And I truly believe they're blessings. And I recently actually met with a medium in your neck of the woods, over in England. And that was an equally healing blessing. It was just actually on her birthday was in February. And so I kind of treated myself for her birthday and had one over in your neck of the woods. And it was beautiful, beautiful birthday present to myself. And so again, unless, she knew me, and that's over in England, how would she know the things that she knew? And so I just feel really blessed. And I got a really, really wonderful reading. And yeah, it was great.
I think it's about finding the right people. And I think you mentioned about, yes, there were some charlatans that you came across first, but I think they're probably quite easy to sift out. Like you say, when you found a real one, if you like, authentic one. Because I think, at times of tragedy, whatever that tragedy is, a lot of people do turn to religion. And you mentioned actually you literally were praying to God when you were in the hospital, because I think that is probably what the majority of people would do, because it's what else can you do? You've got nothing else. So you turn to faith. And so many people do turn either to sort of faith or some sort of something to believe in. Right. I'm almost quite curious now that you mentioned the spirituality is and saying about people not being open to it. I always think of Americans as being more open to things than maybe the Brits. I always think we're a little bit more closed off. Is that how you see it? Am I wrong?
I think it's probably 50-50. I think there's, I don't know. I think it's, I don't know. I really don't. I think, I know I've always been really open to spirituality, and I'm just very open in general. The woman who actually helped me write my book is, a devout Christian, and I am so blessed by her, and I'm open to that. And, that's great. I love her. She's a wonderful woman. I just am very open-minded. So I think for me, I guess I just don't really believe one thing. I want to be open to everything, and I want to experience everything. So I'm just very like, well, I want to, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. And if I get to experience it all, then I'm kind of just really happy with it all. I'm not going to I just don't like to put myself into one box. Yeah. I like being able to be open and experience all the things that life has to offer. And so for me, I think it's just given me more opportunity in life to seek out all the different things, but I would never, not hang out with someone or not, whatever, just because they like this or they like, want to have that. And so, but yeah, I think I don't know. Americans, I think it's probably 50-50. I think there's, you know, they there's groupings of, you know, and I think it probably is the same for you. I think maybe you maybe just feel like maybe they're a little less closed off. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. It is hard to say because people, you know, people just kind of do what they
Do what's comfortable. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, do what they want. And part of it I think is, you know, new age versus old age, old school, what they're used to, you know, like, you know, for my parents, for example, I was brought up Catholic, and I didn't continue that on with my kids, or, you know, or any of that, but my parents, you know, were, so I think, yeah, I think it's just kind of, you know,
it's personal,
how that
very
talks.
personal.
Yeah, it is kind of personal, but for me, I just like to be open-minded, and I'm just kind of open to whatever, like, try it all.
Yeah. Well, slightly digressing, but on a similar theme,
Mm-hmm.
astrology is fascinating if you've not explored that, because that just links in with everything so incredibly. And it does sort of have that angle linking in with spirituality as well. So yeah, astrology is incredible. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm a Cancer.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm Aquarius.
Okay.
So are there any sort of insights that you could give, particularly any parent who might be going through loss of any description, really? What would you say, or how would you help them?
Yeah, that, you know, and that's kind of why I have my website. You know, that was a big thing for me. I wanted to have my website up for parents who are experiencing loss, just so they could see my blogs from the beginning. Like, it does get better. I know they don't want to hear that in the beginning. That's really hard to hear in the beginning, is that it gets better. And what I would say is, it does get better. It's obviously never better, but it gets softer. And that was something that someone told me earlier, and it has resonated with me going, you know, this is going to be year 7. She came and she held my hands. This woman, her name was Karen, and she had lost 2 sons. And she said to me, it's never going to go away, but it will soften. And at the time, you know, I was in my probably the first 6 months, and I thought, okay. But to this day, she's right. It gets softer and softer. Doesn't get better, but it does get softer, and it gets manageable. You know, right now it feels like it's unmanageable, and it does. It's chaotic. It's unmanageable. It's unbearable, but it will become manageable. It does soften. And, you know, the people that are trying to be helpful, even though, you know, you probably don't think they're being helpful or they're saying the wrong things, they are trying. Their heart is in the right place. And, you know, at some point you will realize that it's hard, you know, it's hard. And just, you know, try to give yourself some grace. You can't fix everything. You can't be everybody's helper. And I want to say, you know, it's hard for the dads because they're not going to talk. So it's real hard on the dads. They're going to shut down. The dads shut down. The moms are going to feel like they have to take care of everything, like the moms do anyway. But then it feels even more compounding because you have to take care of everybody and grieve. And then you feel like you have no time to do that because you're taking care of everybody. But it does get softer.
Yeah, because I think for the men, they, they still want to be the strong one,
Mm-hmm.
and so they will, I always think, if whatever is happening for anybody, when you go through something, and particularly if you don't, if you like deal with it and address it and talk about it and get help for it, then it will go somewhere. It will reveal itself somewhere. And it could reveal itself in so many ways. It can be depression, it can be anxiety, insomnia. Yeah. Those are the obvious, but it can go into addiction. It can go into OCD behavior or self-harm. It can go into something very destructive. It literally can cause people to self-sabotage their lives, just ruin everything they've got. So for men as well, I mean, that's a big sort of message that I'm trying to get out as my book is getting closer to being published, is men really need to address these things and realize that they have a mental health as well. It's not just women that have a mental health. We all have a mental health. It's just different strains of how healthy that is. In the same way we have a physical body.
Yes.
But the physical body has different levels of health. So does the mind. And, you and I were speaking before about, there's not just the standard, if you like, psychotherapy, counseling. There is so much you can sort of investigate and try nowadays, and so much quality holistic treatment out there. And I think it's a lot about connecting with the person that you're working with, if you do go down that professional route, and not everybody feels the need to or has to, and that's their choice. But if you do, I think you've got to feel that that person's really listening, that they are supportive, and they're helping you.
Oh, I completely agree. Yes, you have to find the right fit for you, and if not, try someone else. Because once you do find that fit, the work that you can do with that person is going to be amazing, just amazing. I'm thankful. I found it took me a while, because I went to therapy right after everything happened and I wasn't ready to do the work. But by year 3, I finally went back and I found my amazing therapist who I could not be doing life without her right now. I love her. I meet with her bi-weekly, and fantastic. And yeah, I mean, she's great. And I meet with her even if I don't have anything to talk about. We just meet. Sometimes we just talk about writing. I just talk to her about my book stuff. And it's so helpful just to have that outside of your house feedback, to let you know that she either validates what I'm doing, or sometimes she says, no, you're off track. You need to, whatever. But it's just nice to have somebody outside of your personal bubble. And it's kind of funny, because I just to kind of go back talking about we were saying how it manifests itself into something else. I kind of want to go back to that and kind of tell you what I was doing before I started therapy and didn't realize how much I needed to go to therapy. I was having some issues. Like I said, I went to therapy and I wasn't ready to do the work. And so I didn't go. And then I was having some anger issues, and I didn't understand where it was coming from. I had never really been an angry person. And I was having some major anger outbursts. And I thought that my husband and I were having marriage issues. So we signed up for marriage counseling. And now my husband is not Zoe's father. He's my second husband. And so we signed up for marriage counseling, and we went to our first session, and we realized that, no, we're not having marriage counseling. You're having a problem. It's you. And so then that was it. He didn't have to come back anymore. It was just me. I needed to come. And it was anxiety and OCD. I've got some OCD, and it's coming out. It's anxiety being brought on by, the trauma, and just not having dealt with it. And so now, that's some things that we work on, just cognitive behavior skills, and, readdressing, like, what can you control and what can't you control, and basically, control issues from not having control over my situation. And I start having these OCD outbursts, and then it turns into anger. And it was it was very interesting, learning this about myself. Like, that's how it manifested. But very interesting. And
because I always feel that the mind is trying to do its best. It's trying to find solutions. Anxiety is your mind trying to keep you safe,
mhm.
Although it's on over alert, and OCD is the same. It's the mind's trying to find solutions, but it's just not finding the right ones, and that's why people need to address these things. How important do you feel it is for people to seek some sort of professional help?
Well, I think, one, you need to find what's going to work for you, whether it's counseling, hypnotherapy, even, massage. Massage is very relaxing. Reiki, is very relaxing. So finding what works for you, even a life coach, or now I'm seeing people are doing grief coaching, find something that works for you. If it works for you and you're finding that it's benefiting you in your life, then do it. There's, it doesn't even have to be, just, what they deem the normal, of counseling. Find what works for you. That's how I look at it. If it's working for you and you're enjoying it, acupuncture is great. It's relaxing too. And there's lots of benefits. People are finding lots of benefits from Chinese herbal medicine. So if you find something that's working for you, I say go for it. For me, I've done quite a few things. I've done the counseling, I've done acupuncture, I get massages frequently. I love Reiki. I love all that. Love seeing my medium, I do all of it. My counselor does hypnotherapy as well. I haven't tried it with her yet, but it's on our to-do list. So, but yeah, I mean, there's just so many things out there that I think are great. Yeah.
There really is. I think some people fear therapy, but I think that's purely the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And I call myself a modern day therapist. I like to sort of think that my setting is not what I'd call a clinical setting. It's very homely. And for me, it is about that connection. And first and foremost, I want someone to come in here and feel safe and comfortable, and to feel that they've got trust in me, and they can, it's these four walls and that is it. Because those are fundamental, aren't they? But no one's going to open up unless they feel safe.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think it is. And talk to people, ask them, what have you tried, what have you found good? And you might just be amazed at what people have found benefit in. And like you say, you're still going to find your own path, but I'd like to think there's something for everybody, because there's such a range out there,
right? Well, and by human nature, humans want connection. Humans want connection, and we want human touch, and so if we can find that, and you can find that balance that works for you, I think it's so important. And I think, honestly, like we were talking about earlier, is the disconnect. It's a helpful and not helpful having social media, because we are getting disconnected, and we're missing connection. And so if we can get back to connection, I think a lot of our problems could be solved. We're missing that connection piece. And I think, human nature is to connect, to be around people, to be surrounded by people. And I think a lot of people's newer anxieties are coming from that disconnect.
Absolutely. I think, there's so much pressure if we slightly digress again, but in terms of social media, I think it's such a big subject, and there's so much pressure that, particularly youngsters, I feel so thankful that I didn't have social media when I was growing up.
Oh, me too.
I'm just like, oh, thank God for that. I didn't have a mobile, there was no mobile phones. We had a phone in our hallway that was the house phone. And to youngsters now, that would sound so antiquated, but actually that gave me a childhood. And I think social media for some children is taking it away from them for so many reasons. But I think some of the key, sorry, I feel so passionate about this once I start on it, but I think for youngsters, they're putting so much pressure on themselves because they should remember that what they see on social media is a shop window. Effectively, you see what someone wants you to see.
Right.
You see them looking how they want you to see them looking. They've got filters, they've got all sorts going on. And so, this causes youngsters to think, oh, everyone else is better looking than me. Everyone else is having a better life than me. Look at them. They're out with them. They didn't ask me out. I have to reply to these messages straight away, so I'm getting stressed. And it just rules people's lives if they're not careful, and goes back to what I said earlier, really, about setting boundaries. You have to set those boundaries, because also, again, we've all been through this coronavirus in one way or another, and again, the social media media side of things, if you got too caught up in all of that was very negative as well. So you have to control it yourself, and for a parent, you have to look after your children and be very aware of what they're doing, because if you don't take that responsibility, you're going down a slippery slope. So it requires a strong awareness, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I in our case with the high school shooting, I think that was part of the issue, was the social media, the disconnect, wanting just the kids at that time period, 7 years ago, they were all connecting via social media, and then that was how they wanted that instant gratification, talking back and forth through the media, and there was a lot of that back and forth going there, and I think that may have attributed to why they aren't here today.
Yeah, it becomes such well, it's a tangled web, and it can become very unhealthy. So flipping back to health, one of the things in your book is you've got a wellness nice list of very simple wellness tips. So maybe talk through a few of those.
Just ways to get back into wellness if you hadn't been keeping up. It was more kind of geared towards someone who's been through what I've been through, and you've kind of maybe either fallen off, or you need to get yourself back into get out and get walking, drinking water. I'd be surprised at how many people don't even drink water. They're just coffee straight to juice or diet soda or whatever all day long, and then that's it. So just drinking water would be so helpful to get yourself feeling better. Trying to eat better, and if you don't know how to eat better, you can seek out a nutritionist or a dietitian that can help you find a proper diet to get you set, and just eating 3 square meals a day, and not binge eating and things like that. That's always helpful. Finding a hobby is helpful, and connecting with people, getting yourself into a group. Maybe you're feeling alone, you don't have a community, you need to socialize. And if you're not a grieving parent, getting into a community group, maybe a swim club, a walking club, or join your local gym. If you are a grieving parent, find there's lots of in America, we have compassionate friends group. I don't know if that goes worldwide or not, but there's also local chapters of grieving parent groups that you can find, lots of your local churches that you can get involved with online. There's just so many things that you can, get involved in, to get you out there and get you going. Reading's always good. That always just helps broaden the mind and get you out of your head, so you're not just, sitting with your thoughts, because we know where we can go and we just sit with our thoughts, and that's always important to do. But yeah, just, it's just important to find things that we can do to get ourselves out and get motivated.
And I do really think we don't have to overcomplicate these things. They don't have to be complex. It doesn't, and that's the beauty of it. If you haven't been for a walk for a long time and you haven't really moved, go for 10 minutes. Go around the block. Well done. Give yourself a pat on the back for that. You can go a bit longer the next day. You don't. I used to be a personal trainer. Actually, I did that for 3 years, and I always used to say to people, just, you need to build gradually. If you haven't done any, say, gym work, you don't have to go to the gym and batter yourself stupid. Go in, do a few light exercises, spend 20-30 minutes, go home. I think sometimes when people haven't done fitness for a long time, and then they're like, right, get fit, and they just go crazy, and then either they get ill because they've overdone it, or they get injured, and then it all falls apart. It's far better to just build things into your life. So if you're going to do meditation, give yourself time with it. Do short meditations. Be gentle to yourself. If you will have thoughts, I think sometimes people think when they're doing meditation, I shouldn't have any thoughts. Well, good luck, because you're a better person than me.
That's right. Yeah, I know. They're like, well, I was thinking the whole time, and it's like, okay, well, it gets better.
Well, that's it. Yeah. How do you expect to get good at something if you don't practice? If someone wants to be good at football, they practice and they practice. If you want to be good at meditation, practice. Don't expect to be able to do it all really, really well first time. But the perseverance is really worth the effort. It's when you start to get something out of doing these things that you feel better, and you're like, oh, I'm so pleased I stuck to that. So,
with meditation, you still are making that time for yourself, whereas before you weren't. So you're still in the step in the right direction.
So if you just lead it in gently, and just a little bit really on. Well, actually, just to mention, you have a memorial scholarship for Zoe.
Yes, I do.
Could you just maybe talk a little bit about that, explain?
So I just I had one before, and it was coupled with another family, and so I feel very blessed, because with the book now I was able to create my own scholarship, and so I'm so proud that I was able to do that, just for her. And this year we will actually be handing out a $2,000 scholarship to the first recipient, this June. And the scholarship is actually at the high school where she passed. And so that was huge for me. It took me a while to get there. I wasn't sure I would be able to go back to that high school, but I really felt like that's where it needed to go. It needed to go within that same community. So I reached out, and they were, very receiving and very helpful, and helped me get it together. And we now have a Zoe Rain Galasso Memorial Scholarship, and a $2,000 scholarship will go out to a student each year. And the first one goes out this June. And I'm very pleased about it. And so I have information on my website, and I have information in the back of my book on how to donate to that scholarship if anyone wants to help donate to it, or, pass the word on. Yeah.
I think that's lovely. So just talking a little bit about what you do now, and maybe your website, with your healing through wellness business.
So I have a website. It's healingthroughwellness.com. And it's really just a website for parents to go to basically see my story. And it's got, it has some information about my current book and my blog. And my blog has, information from the start. Originally, my book is basically my blog. I started my blog first, and it's my story from the beginning. And I started it so parents had a place that they didn't feel so alone. I wanted a place, when I was alone and I didn't have anybody that I could connect with that, understood what I was going through. I was reading people's stories online, and that is where I felt connected. That's where I was like, oh, okay, somebody gets it. Or, oh, that person gets what I'm going through, and what I'm going through isn't so weird, or, oh, okay, that's normal, So I thought, I should start a blog so that people who maybe have been through what I've been through will understand that what they're going through is normal. So that's how that started. And then I decided, I really need to write this book. So the website's it's a memorial to her, has pictures of her, and just a great place for people to come to remember her and, see pictures of her. It's got the scholarship information. It'll have more book information once I have the other books done, and just a place, if you want to send me an email or you just need a place to reach out, that's really it. I've got, a couple more books coming down the line. I have a children's book that talks about sibling grief coming out next month. It was, that was kind of that's been a fun project. Actually, I have a 4-year-old little girl, and I didn't know how to talk to her about her sister and where she is. And I have bought numerous books, and none of them related to our story. And so I thought, I'm just going to write my own book. And so that's what I did. And so now that book's coming out next month, and it's just a beautiful tribute to Zoe and her, and she'll have that book, and, it's something I can read to her and explain to her where her sister is and where she'll always be, and just kind of help her through grief. And so it's kind of a sibling grief book, and hopefully it'll help other people too.
Yeah. And what's the name of that book?
It's called Sister in My Heart.
Lovely.
So, yeah, it's beautiful. My illustrator, Christian Calhoun, beautiful artwork. Oh, just gorgeous. Very excited about getting that book out. So
fantastic. And just the final thing was, we were speaking about rainbows, because this is so relevant to Zoe, to your story. And I was just saying to you that, we've had 2 lockdowns where I live in Guernsey, and rainbows were the thing, and I don't know if that was a worldwide thing, but it was a big thing over here, with people putting rainbows on their windows and coloring pebbles and colors of the rainbows. It was just a really big thing. And it's like that, it's a hope, isn't it? You think of a rainbow as sort of hope and such a positive thing. And I remember as a child, you'd get excited if you saw a rainbow. So how do you connect in that way with the rainbows and Zoe? What's the reminder or the memoir for you?
So rainbows are so magical for us with her. The day she died, there was a rainbow shooting out over the school. And I don't know if you mind if I reverse this so I can show you. Will it reverse? Oh, I don't know. Oh, it will. Okay, I'm going to show you this picture that I have hanging on my wall. Can you see that?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
That's the school, and that's the rainbow that was coming out of the school on the day that she died. Wow. And someone took a picture of that for me. So there's that. And then anytime that there's a big event or anything associated with her, we get rainbows. Her birthday, this last birthday, this is just an amazing story. My parents are actually here visiting me, and we did a pie for her, and we sang happy birthday. And as soon as we were done singing happy birthday to her, I started getting messages on my phone from where I live here in Virginia and from where I'm originally from in Washington. At the exact same time, people were sending me pictures of rainbows. We had rainbows here and we had rainbows in Washington. 3-hour difference, same time. We had just done her birthday, sang her song, and rainbows just appeared. Isn't that amazing?
It is.
And it's just like, and I'm like, what are the odds of that? Like, the only way that I can prove to anyone that happened was that I took a video on my phone of us, my little one, blowing out the candle for her, and the timestamp of that, and then of everyone sending me the videos, because that just is unreal that would happen. So yeah, just things like that all the time.
Yeah, so that helps you feel that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think that's a lovely note to finish our chat. It's been so wonderful talking to you. A very overwhelming, heartwarming story, heart-wrenching story, and you seem to me just to be such an incredible lady to have got to where you've got to, and helping others now, which, you know, if we can bring something from a tragedy that helps others, and it does soften it as well. So, you know, thank you for all you do to help other people, because I think that's so invaluable, especially when they know that you've been through it, because I think there's something about that help from somebody who's been through the same thing or similar. It is all the more meaning, I think. So, you know, I don't know how you are quite so strong and amazing, but you are. So thank you so much for your time. Is there, I don't know if there's any last message you wanted to say?
Well, you know, if I can help one person, I've done what I'm supposed to on this earth, right? That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
You know, we're all here to help each other out, and I just want to do my part.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you, Anne. I appreciate it.
Take good care.
You too.